When we feel hopeless, people listen to music, they listen to calming, long-form videos, they read poetry, read romance books, read angsty fan fiction. Truly, I love to calm myself down with Dan Olson or H. Bomberguy, with the poetry of Langston Hughes, Asada Shakur and Rafat Alarir, or the one about the two-headed calf. I like belting Union songs while cooking or driving, but in truth, there's one essay I turn to time and time again to reread when I feel pessimistic and I need to read something radically optimistic to cheer me up. Today I'm going to summarize my favorite essay. Not my favorite video essay, an actual essay, like some kind of nerd. This is a feminist text written by Alexandra Kollontai, a Soviet feminist and the People's Commissar of Welfare under Lenin. This is about women living in communism. And no matter your political beliefs, if you are a feminist or a fan of learning history, or just need something to cheer you up today, I think you should stick around and listen. Do some chores, rest your eyes, or listen to this on your commute. I'm going to change the wording around to make it more understandable, so if you want to read the original, that's linked in the description. Without further ado, I present to you Communism and the Family by Comrade Alexandra Kollontai. Part 1. Women's role in production, its effect upon the family. Will the family continue to exist under communism? Will the family look the same? These questions trouble many working-class women and their husbands. After the socialist revolution in Russia, life is changing before our very eyes. Old habits and customs are dying out, and daily life for a working-class proletarian family is developing, changing, in a way that is new and unfamiliar. For many, what is unfamiliar is deemed bizarre, so it's no wonder many women are thinking about these questions. As opposed to the chauvinist system before us under monarchy and capitalism, in our new Soviet Russia, divorce is far easier. Divorce is no longer a luxury only the rich can afford. Now, due to advances made by the people, a working woman no longer has to wait months or even years while petitioning government over and over, all while her husband beats her and makes her life misery while drinking himself to death. Divorce by mutual agreement now takes no more than a week to obtain. Women who are unhappy with married life are far happier now they can escape these abusive situations. But other women are frightened. Some see their husband as the breadwinner of the family, goated with the sauce, if you will. In the past, under individualistic capitalism, a woman was attached to the man financially and emotionally, controlled. Now women can find support elsewhere, not just in the men, but in the collective and in society, emotionally and financially. In the old family, the man was everything and the woman was nothing. The woman had no will of her own, no time of her own, and no money of her own. This is changing before our very own eyes. But change isn't scary. Thinking things we are used to can never change is ignorance. Let's just look at how things were in the past, before the capitalist nuclear family, to show you things weren't always this way, and growing past the nuclear family is possible. Once the kinship family was the norm. The mother headed a family consisting of her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Other periods of history, it was the patriarchal family, similar but with a man at the head of the family, whose word was law. Some family systems allow the man to have several wives, some family systems allow the woman to have several husbands. In some systems, the young girl is meant to be a virgin until marriage, and in some cultures, having many lovers is a source of pride. Some practices we might think are astonishing are normal to others who think our customs are sinful. Think about your beliefs and how they might differ to your grandparents, for example, how you might disagree on what a relationship is. These things, culturally, change. So there's no reason to be scared of changing outdated systems of relations between men and women. We should keep the parts of our family system that harmonize with and uplift the power of the people, but sweep aside any old, outdated nonsense that comes from the cursed epoch of servitude and domination. When we get rid of the exploiting class and the enemies of the poor, we should with it get rid of exploitation in the family. Get rid of the parts of our family system that are exploitative, chauvinist, that hold us back from helping our friends by promoting individual gain in a nuclear family over collective good for a wider community. Once upon a time, there was an isolated, firmly knit family in the rural areas who needed a family structure to feed and clothe and bring up the children. Back then, being an orphan was a death sentence because you needed this isolated family to survive. Now, with community and collective action, it isn't so much. This is a small way the family has become more communal, and it's good. In this old model, the husband would work, and the wife would do the housekeeping, including raising the children. Equally important tasks, but only the man's role is paid. We'll discuss that later. As capitalism grew out of feudalism, factories and other enterprises that employ hired labor have increased, so there was this change in family structure. Now, the woman needed to work. For the last 50 or 60 years, and keep in mind this was written in 1920, women have been forced to look for work outside of the home. Every year, more and more working-class women would have to leave home to become labourers, saleswomen, clerks, washerwomen, and servants. In 1914, before the First World War, there were 60 million women working in Europe and America, with even more joining during the war. In our modern day, where it's even harder for one person's wages to fill the needs of a whole family, almost every woman is working. What kind of family life is there if the wife and the mother is out for 10 hours a day? The children have no maternal care. They're exposed to dangers out on the street, and when the woman gets home after working the same hours as her male counterpart, she's now expected to cook and clean and take care of the children? More burden has been added by the capitalist nuclear family without any being lifted. She is now a wage worker without having any less obligation to be a housekeeper and a mother. It's a triple load. Life has never been easy for women, but it's never been harder for women than it has under capitalism. We talk about work-life balance for the tired old salaryman, but when he gets home to take off his shoes and open a beer, his equally tired wife has to hurry home right after work to prepare a meal, spending no time on her own enrichment activities like spending time with friends. She has to scramble through the most pressing matters of her domestic activities before it's too late in the night, and ultimately, she's unable to finish everything, so she has to sleep so she can wake up early and go back to work, tired from an intense lack of sleep. The circumstances that held the family together in the first place, one person working and the other housekeeping, is now loosening and falling apart. So no wonder the family model under capitalism is becoming irrelevant and needs a desperate change. The old family structure was useful at the time because the husband would be the breadwinner, and the family economy was useful to all its members. Children had a mother to care for them, mothers had a husband to care for them, and husbands had a wife to take care of their children. But none of this remains now. It's not useful to the mothers because they no longer have a man providing for them, and she needs to provide as well because one wage isn't enough anymore. And the children hardly have a mother. I mean, I didn't grow up poor, but for my most important developmental years, I still only saw my mother in the morning on Friday. I saw her for 3 hours before bed on weekdays, and on weekends, she was busy with chores. And, I had her for even less time if she wanted to see friends and family, which she should be able to do without having to worry about her shit kids. The family is ceasing to be necessary. What made it strong has fallen apart, and now it is only relevant because it's the main economic unit of society, and the family is also the main supporter and educator of children. But, as Soviet Russia was able to create public education, the educator of children also ceased to be a reason the family was necessary. So, Part 2. Housework ceases to be necessary. The housework a woman did back in the time when the feudal family began to become the capitalist family was necessary and essential, not just for the family, but for the whole of their society. The woman back then did everything women do now, but as well as cooking and cleaning, she also mended the clothes, spun wool and linen, wove cloth and garment, knitted stockings, made lace, prepared pickles and jams and preserves for winter, made wax candles. You think about someone churning butter in an old photograph or a feudal painting, and you don't think about a man, do you? You see the housewife. Not only does she do all this to help the family, but she can sell them into the economy. There's so many things this old working woman had to do that we no longer do, that it's hard to even put together a list. Back in those days, it wasn't just necessary, but also beneficial. The more the mistress of the house applied herself, the better the family lived. For example, when she made cloth, thread, or butter, she didn't just help the family, but she could sell the surplus on the market and better the family's financial position. This wasn't just about satisfying the immediate needs of the family. The woman would genuinely improve the standing of the household. And men at the time knew they needed their woman as much as she needed him because his labor alone wouldn't keep a house in order. And the more surplus women generated, preserved jars or butter or linen, the better the local economy would be, and the economic prosperity of the whole country. But capitalism changed all this. What was produced in the family is now made on a mass scale in workshops and factories. Your mother or your wife isn't going to make candles or spin wool or weave because you can just buy those from the store. Who knows how to knit stockings now it's seen as silly to make your own? Besides, she doesn't have the time. Time is money. Any time spent on unnecessarily making candles or stocking is times you're not spending making a real wage. Compare the housework of this productive woman who'd make candles and preserves and sell them to the modern housewife. The chores of a housewife now are dishes and sweeping, and none of that can be exported out. Now, it's necessary work, but it's not beneficial work. The woman has been forced into a position where the work she has to do doesn't benefit her much at all. So in addition to clocking in at work, she now has to use her spare time cooking and cleaning, and these jobs she does are not of use to the national economy. They don't create any new value. She can spend all day, morning to evening, cleaning, washing, ironing, sorting clothes, preparing food, and she will end the day without having created any new value. This next quote from the essay is so good, I'm going to leave it unchanged. Even if a working woman were to live 1,000 years, she would still have to begin every day from the beginning. There's always a new layer of dust, another muddy kid's shoe, and another hungry husband returning from work. This work is becoming less useful to the community as a whole. The solution here is collective housekeeping. There's always a new layer of dust, another muddy kid's shoe, and another hungry husband returning from work. This work is becoming less useful to the community as a whole. The solution here is collective housekeeping. In the same way we've moved from women making candles and butter to buying them at the store, let's do that with housekeeping. Instead of the woman cleaning her flat, the communist society can arrange for men and women whose job it is to go around every morning cleaning rooms in the apartment blocks. The wives of the rich have long since been freed from domestic duties, so why should the working woman continue to be burdened by them? The woman who goes to work cleaning apartments wouldn't be the servant or the slave like the rich women get. This woman who works as a housekeeper gets to come home paid for her work to a nice, clean house, having produced something for society and helped many people keep their homes clean. Under communism, the working woman should be surrounded by the same ease and hygiene that previously only the rich could afford. Instead of the working woman having to struggle with cooking and spending her last free hours in the kitchen preparing dinner, communist society can organize public restaurants, communal kitchens, and free cafeterias in apartment blocks. The working woman won't have to slave over the washing any longer, ruining her eyes while mending stockings or linen. She can take these things to central laundries each week and collect the washed and ironed clothes later. That's another job you don't have to do. The working woman should be allowed to devote her evenings to whatever she wants. Reading books, attending meetings or concerts, visiting friends, and having real opportunities for enrichment. Only communism can free the working woman from the expectations capitalism puts on her. Housework is doomed to extinction with the victory of communism, and the working woman has no reason to regret this. Communism liberates women from her domestic slavery and makes our lives richer, safer, and happier. Part 3. The state is responsible for the upbringing of children. Okay, so housework can disappear, but what about children? Here too, the workers' state can help. Society can take on all the tasks that before the revolution fell to individual parents. Even now, teaching children isn't really the duty of parents. Once they reach school age, they're shipped off to be someone else's responsibility. But the parents still have the responsibilities of feeding children, buying them shoes and clothes, and making sure they're developing properly, so that when the time comes, they can live independently. However, few workers' families are able to fulfill these obligations. Low wages under capitalism caused the families before the 1917 revolution to be unable to give their children enough to eat. A lack of free time meant children didn't get the attention they need. And think of the children in our society who need to get jobs at McDonald's in their teens to help their family. Just like housework, a kind society should help to take on responsibilities like this. Under capitalism, children are a financial and emotional burden, not to mention a long-time investment. Communist society will come to the aid of the parents. Kollontai speaks about what her government agencies, the commissariats of public education and social welfare, are doing to help, like having homes for small babies, creches, kindergartens and children's homes, hospitals and health resorts for sick children, restaurants, free lunches at school, free distribution of textbooks, warm clothing and shoes to school children. All of this is what it looks like to see responsibility over children passing from the family to the collective society. The best weapon to stifle the working class people and weaken their revolutionary spirit is to make the woman a slave and the husband a master, still enslaved to the capitalist machine. So capitalism aided the workers by having primary and secondary schools aided by the state, but to take too much burden from the family would stop this stifling weapon they use to crush us. When the worker is weighed down by family duty, he's obliged to compromise to the capitalist. When the child is hungry, the father and mother will agree to any wage just to help feed the child. Lifting the responsibility and care of children from parents and making education a truly social and state matter is an immensely effective tool for freeing men and women to have the leisure time they need, to remove the financial burden of having children from them. The old family is narrow and petty. The old family needs to hoard money. They need to compete with their neighbor. They quarrel. They're only interested in bettering their own children to the detriment of other children in a kind of keeping up with the Joneses way. This kind of upbringing can't raise or educate a kind, empathetic communist who'll go out of their way to help others. But when the playgrounds, gardens, homes, and other amenities where the child can safely spend time playing and learning, they can be in a position where the child will learn the importance of solidarity, intersectionality, comradeship, mutual help, and loyalty to all your fellow workers. I've often thought about if I'd ever have children, wanting to read about how to raise my child to be empathetic and kind, to be a brave anti-racist, and to stand up to the casual injustices I saw at school, but was never brave enough myself to stand up to. I believe the bullying I faced in primary school could have been completely avoided if not for the competition a capitalist society puts on children. The parents still have a responsibility to the youngest of babies while they learn to walk and need much care and attention, and the communist state can make sure all mothers, married or unmarried, have maternity homes and day nurseries so the mother can always learn how to best care for the baby, get help from professionals, and leave the baby somewhere they are loved so the baby isn't neglected. Reading this part of the essay, I'm reminded a lot of the book The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog by Bruce Perry, a book about childhood trauma and how many busy mothers accidentally neglect their child without realizing it. Some children are left alone without someone to care for them while the mother works. These children cry into the dark room they're in, but no help comes. Soon, they learn that crying doesn't bring help or comfort, so they stop crying. They become numb, and by not asking for help as a baby, they receive less, snowballing into neglect strong enough to cause them to become detached and antisocial. I think about how under a communist system, where no baby need be left alone, nobody will have to cry into the darkness for help that won't come ever again. Love and affection can be shared with every child. No communist intends to take the children from their parents or tear a baby from their mum's breast or violently destroy the family. It's just that communists like us see the breakup of the old type of family, that the reasons it exists are no longer relevant, and we want to help reinvigorate the domestic economy and help working class parents take care of their children. I'm going to quote the essay directly again because I think this part is beautiful. Communist society has this to say to the working man and woman. You are young, you love each other, everyone has the right to happiness. Therefore, you live your life. Do not flee happiness, do not fear marriage, even though under capitalism marriage was truly a chain of sorrow. Do not be afraid of having children. Society needs more workers and rejoices at the birth of every child. You do not have to worry about the future of your child. Your child will know neither hunger nor cold. Communist society will take care of every child and mother, feed and bring up the child, and parents who wish to be with their child every step of the journey will never be prevented from doing so. The responsibility of care lays on society, but the joys of parenthood should never be taken from those who appreciate them, as capitalism so often does. When you hear a communist say, "Abolish the family," this is what we mean. Not a cold, sadistic plan where we take kids from mums, but the building of a new society based on love, empathy, and solidarity. The family is already withering away before our eyes, not because anybody is killing it, but because it's not necessary anymore. The state doesn't feed the family, and the family distracts the worker from more useful things. So many people don't want to have a family under capitalism because of how expensive it is. And I totally get it. People on disability pensions here in Australia can't get married because their welfare checks might be slashed in half or even altogether taken away. In the place of the old totalitarian relationship between man and woman, a new one is developing. A communist relationship is a union of affection and comradeship, a union of two equal members of communist society, both free and both of them independent and both of them workers. No more domestic bondage for women, no more inequality within the family, no need for women to fear being left without support and with children to bring up. The woman in communist society no longer depends upon her husband but on her work, her own self-determination. The woman doesn't need to fear her child will go cold or hungry. Marriage won't be about material calculation, doing the maths about whether marriage will nullify your welfare or make your taxes go up, or if a divorce will bankrupt you, or if marrying a rich man is the only way to pay your rent. Marriage will be a union of two people who love and trust each other. Women who stand for the liberation of the working class have to understand there's no more room for the attitude that goes, "These are my children, I'm giving them all my maternal affection and attention. Those are your children, I don't care about them, and I don't care if they go hungry or cold." The new worker mother will learn not to differentiate between yours and mine. There are only the children of society which we all have a responsibility to care for. In place of individualistic and egoistic families, there can be a universal family of workers where we are all comrades, and this new relations between men and women can stop the chauvinist oppression that makes men think they are better in favor of a love and solidarity with your comrade, no matter their gender. I hope you enjoyed listening to my summary of Alexandra Kollontai's Communism and the Family. If you'd like to listen to more like this where you can hear my voice, tell me in the comments and I'll read other essays I enjoy. We have a world to win and nothing to lose but our chains.